Good evening and welcome to our Eurovision evening. I apologise for the delay this evening. It's technical difficulty. I understand that many of you would have gone to the website and not found the link, so I do apologise for that. We've rectified that now, and I know that many of you have joined us this evening, so sorry we're 15 minutes later than the published start time. I won't speak to you for very long this evening because the real business sits with others who will be taking you through some subject-specific revision material and some more generic revision material leading up to the exams which come in the summer. And this evening, you can see on the screen there the group of staff will be speaking. Obviously, I'm talking to you now as the head teacher. Mrs. Waynes and Mr. Friars will be speaking to you about more general kind of preparation for exams and revision skills that will be of use to you to understand how you can support your children as well as to your children in revising for the exams themselves. You'll then get a really invaluable insight into specific core subject areas through Miss Clement, who is our curriculum leader for English, through Mr. Atkinson, our curriculum leader for maths, and Mrs. Layton, our curriculum leader for science. And they'll be talking through some of the specifications and the detail of the exams and some subject specific ways by which you might help your children to revise. So what I would like to say to you, first of all, is, as I say, quite short, quite brief, but the link to the intent and the statements that you've seen here, which sits very comfortably in terms of the evening tonight. And we talk about developing a love of learning and achieving the best possible outcomes for all students. And that really is the kind of coalface of where we are now, because this is where it matters. And we know that your children have had all kinds of uncertainty and disruption to their education over the past couple of years. We need to remember that's the same for all students in Year 11. And if we think of it as being kind of like a race, they are competing with everyone else in a similar position in all schools nationally. One of the questions that I've been asked a lot of times quite recently is about whether exams in the summer are likely to go ahead. There have been points where we've maybe questioned whether they would do that. It would appear quite clearly now with the kind of the impetus around the kind of removal of restrictions and the expectation that we get to the summer with some form of normality, that we very much do expect those exams to go ahead. So I think we very much plan for that to happen. We do have a backup. We have already done one set of assessments. We've got another set coming up shortly. And then obviously in the summer, we would have either the exams or the final kind of assessments feeding into those final grades. But I would very much assume as parents and the students that we will have the exams in the summer. That seems very much the kind of tidal wave of expectation at the moment. And developing a love of learning, achieving the best possible outcomes for all students clearly is at the heart of all that we'll be doing this evening. So I will say no more than to wish all of you very good luck over the next few months. I know as a parent of two boys of my own how difficult it can be to be a parent of children facing exams, let alone for the children themselves. And we just want to be there to support you all the way along that journey. So I will hand over at that point to Mrs. Waynes, who's going to take you through some more detailed information about exams, specifications and revision. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm just going to go through some points. I'm guessing that I can maybe only see the top of my head. I'm just going to go through some points regarding the information booklet that you were given back in September. And thank you to those that joined us for the information evening at the time. I would like to bring you back to that, and it is a really valuable resource for all students as they do prepare for the exams. Obviously, that was a supportive measure when students sat their mocks in November, and obviously as they approach them again in February, it will prove a really useful tool. Along with that, there is the study guides that students have been made aware of, and I did attach a list of the recommended study guides to the letter that was sent out inviting you along this evening. So please ensure that you go back to this and make any orders, if necessary, regarding specific study guides. I know that our faculty areas are more than happy to support you with that. So just to go through some points really, why are we talking about revision and why are we talking about it now? And some of these points were mentioned at the information evening, but again, I think it's really important to come back to them. The GCSEs that you will sit in the summer and some BTEC qualifications are the first step into a brighter future for you as an individual. Revision that you do in preparation for that really is that investment you make in that future. Remember as well that nothing is free and there is always a price to pay. And I always say that what you put into something, you will get out of it. So it's really important to consider that point as you approach these mock exams in February and look towards the future and the summer and the point that Mr. Johnson just made. There can be many barriers to revision, but it's about how we overcome them, how we can support you in school in overcoming those barriers, but also for you as parents, how you can support your children in overcoming those barriers. Some of those barriers could be around confidence and having that self-belief in your ability. Some of them could be linked to the pandemic and obviously the issues that have had an impact on you as students over the past couple of years. There could be pressure from friends. Could be down to a lack of motivation. I know it's really hard, especially at this time of year with dark nights and not very pleasant weather, but it's really important to think about how we can motivate ourselves. We can often think that we've got too many other things to do, but it's remembering that that revision is that really important process in being successful within the exams. You might feel overwhelmed. You might feel that you have too much revision to do. And I know Mr. Friars has provided you with templates for revision timetables, and he'll touch on some more to do with that this evening. And often it can seem really overwhelming because you're not entirely sure where to start. Okay, but we are here at school to support you as students to overcome those barriers. And I'm sure at home parents are willing to support you and help ways at home in how you can overcome those barriers. Please just remember to ask for help. So I want to talk through the logistics of how you can revise successfully. And sometimes, I know as much as we rely on our mobile phones and our tablets, not having them there as a distraction and having them out of mind really does make a difference to the revision that you'll be able to carry out. A lot of students will say that listening to music helps them concentrate, but actually removing those earphones and focusing on the task that you've got in front of you will make a big, big difference to the progress that you make. Not having distractions. Sometimes we rely on the internet to support us with our revision, but sometimes turning it off can help us concentrate fully. I know that some faculties encourage the use of specific quiz websites, which obviously you would need the internet for, but when you don't need it, is it worth turning it off so it's not there as an added distraction? Use a quiet room, work at a desk. Okay, think about how that environment that you surround yourself in can help you be even more productive, and have all that you need to hand. And I'll talk through some resources that might support you in doing that. Revise efficiently and then use the rest of the time to enjoy your weekends or holidays. Having that timetable can really help you plan and ensure that you use your time successfully, because then what you can do is plan for your free time to ensure that you have that to look forward to. Strategies that don't work, okay, something to consider. Revising the topics that you already know, okay. Going back to what you know can seem easier and less effort, and it makes you feel really good, but actually it's looking at those elements that we don't feel as confident with that will benefit us. If we aimlessly reread notes, it's not of any benefit. Using highlighter pens all over your notes, research does say that highlighting work doesn't help you remember it, but it may help in highlighting key points that you need to come back to for a specific reason. But don't rely on it solely as a revision tool. Cramming as well for your exams. It might be better than nothing, but not by much, okay? And it can do more harm than good. It's really important to come back to that timetable and to allow specific time to different subjects, and that will support you much more successfully. So what makes effective revision? I just want to put those two images up there that you will have seen before, but it reinforces that point of having a quiet room, having a desk, and removing those distractions like the TV, for example, but even more so the internet. Equipment is really, really important, okay? Ensuring that you have the pens, highlighters, post-it notes, flashcards, revision books and notebooks, but you, making sure that you're present in that environment when you are revising, and just think about that equipment so you don't then have to keep getting up and getting something else. Have your desk laid out in front of you with everything that you could possibly need, and then you are making effective use of that time. Prioritize, sacrifice and organize. Okay, those 3 words can really help you in being successful. Prioritizing those particular aspects of one subject where you know that you need to focus on revision. That small sacrifice in ensuring that you prioritize your revision, and at times sacrifice some free time, but plan for that free time, okay, just in preparation for these exams. But being organised makes a huge difference. From organising your desk to organising a revision timetable, it really will prepare you for those exams. Okay, you determine how successful this journey will be, nobody else. And I know you've seen that slide before. I know it's something that Mr. Fries has shared previously, but it really, really does make a difference. It is you, okay? You determine the success that you will have, and everybody else is there to support you, but it's up to you to actually make that a success. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Fryers, but I wish you the best of luck with your revision year 11, and remember to come and speak to us if you need any support. We are here to help, and parents in the same way, if we can do anything, those channels of communication are open. Speak to us and we'll do what we can to support you and your children. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Year 11 students and Year 11 parents. I hope you can see me. We just might have a little bit of adjusting there. Thank you, sir. So before I get into sharing some key revision strategies and ideas that we have mentioned to you earlier on in the year, I just want to share this slide with you firstly, which actually shows the mentor agenda that the students have been following every single morning, Monday to Friday in mentor time this year. There might have been a slight change since you last looked at that, which is on the Tuesday for Year 11, where the English department have introduced a successful literacy register and read programme that obviously the students have found very beneficial going towards their English exams, for example. The other reason that I'm showing you that now is the difference between earlier on in the year. As we get closer to the exams for Year 11, we are going to look to change some of those activities. So hopefully we can actually fit some revision time and some revision tasks into one of those days, and we might do it on a couple of days even. All right, the students haven't been told that yet, but after February half term, that is something we are going to look to introduce, where they get an extra opportunity on a morning to actually do some revision. That will help some students who struggle on a night, especially have, for example, a part-time job where they don't get as much time at home to revise as they might like. I shared this slide with you earlier in the year as well for the people who managed to come to the information evening. The second bullet point there about behaviour and relationships with staff. Hopefully by this stage of Year 11, with only around 3 or 4 months left, that isn't an issue anymore. I will say that I don't get called to many lessons with Year 11 to pick up those issues because many of them are actually focused in the lesson doing the tasks with their individual teachers. The 3 that are more important now, with only 3 or 4 months left, is actually the short-term goals, long-term goals, and the use of their own time, as Miss Waynes has just touched on. The students really do need to be having those conversations at home with yourselves, if they haven't already done so, about what are they going to do next year when it comes to September. What is their next step? What are they aspiring for? Is it a college? Is it an apprenticeship? They really need to be having those conversations with you guys and people in school if they haven't already done so. I know this slide, the students will have seen it before in a couple of assemblies with Mr. Johnson. It's basically saying that our biggest danger is that we don't push ourselves enough. And we are comfortable with sort of getting a lower to a reasonable grade, which is obviously for many students not what we want in certain areas where they can push themselves to achieve. I speak to many students in year 11, especially the boys, who say to me, oh, I'm sort of happy with a 4, sir, in that subject area. And obviously I know they're capable of a 7 in some subject areas. And it's really important really for their future aspirations and steps that they push themselves on to achieve the best grade possible. This information here, just on the grading, I would hope by now, obviously nearly all the students, but most parents are familiar with the grading structure that happened a couple of years ago now, in terms of changing from letters to numbers. But especially lower down the school, I still get some parents who ask me about this. So hopefully that slide just clears a few things up. When you're looking at the comparisons, you will notice that it doesn't fit perfectly from the left hand side with a grade 9. It doesn't directly go across to the old A star, but it is very close. The key grades that we are looking for a number of students are where it says grade 4, 5 and 6 on the left hand side, and the grade 4 would equate to the old grade C, which was known as the pass. In this new language, just so everyone knows and is clear, grade 4 is still a pass, but it is considered a low pass, where a grade 5 is actually considered a higher solid pass. And then obviously if you go down the scale below the 4s, you would know that is where some students would have to unfortunately consider resits, which is something that obviously we are trying to avoid, but we know some students that will apply to. Some words here that the students hear a lot since the start of year 10, assessment grades, estimates, targets and predictions. So I just want to clear up for anyone confused about some of those key terms. So the estimates are actually produced by Fisher Family Trust, and it's based upon a student's achievement at Key Stage 2 when they were in primary school, which sometimes the students find that a little bit confusing about why do we go back there. And it basically shows how the top 5% of similar students have achieved at GCSEs in the past, going over the previous data. When you get some of the monitoring reports home, you see some of these words, and I know it can be quite confusing, especially some of the students come and ask me about this quite a lot. So your predictions are basically what your teacher is predicting you will get in their subject, obviously when it comes up to the exams. And the teachers use a lot of information to make that prediction, one being how hard is the student working in the lesson. But the key one really is obviously the assessment grades that the teachers are doing with the students regularly. That is a true reflection of how your son, daughter is currently working in that subject area. And then the targets, which can be used quite generally, we like basically the students to give themselves their own targets now. Those are the messages that I try to give to the students. What is a realistic ambition in their different subject areas of what they can actually achieve? Just moving on to some of the revision points. There's some information there about how students retain information. The one that really jumps out is that students really only remember 10% of what they read compared to 90% of what they do and say. So on the next couple of slides, I'm just going to give some general reminders about how they can actually retain that information. When we're thinking about actually the human memory, it says there on that slide, without further revision, the average learner retains only 10% of new information after 60 days. Now, if you compare that to doing a GCSE course that started in September 2000, it started in the start of year 10 a couple of years ago. If you think of the impact of COVID as well, where some of our students obviously had some lesson time missed, that is actually going back quite a long time to remember some of that information they've learned in those subjects back in September of year 10. So it's so important that they find useful ways of looking back at that information and actually remember it, especially if after 60 days, 90% of learning is lost if you do nothing to try and remember it again. The forgetting curve just shows this in a little bit more detail. So obviously it says along the left hand side, knowledge retention, and you can see as the days go, if you do nothing to go over the information you have learned once, it quickly fades away. And we are trying to avoid that with the students in their lessons. Some strategies that I think Mr. Stones shared previously with the students, I'm just going to go quickly over on some of the slides coming up. So we've got space practice. This involves repeating material at defined intervals with unrelated activity in between, and has been shown in the lab to improve memory retention. In terms of what the students need to do to actually make that work, it says when you plan out your revision, you need to space out your learning so that you spend small amounts of time on different subjects. Little and often is better technique than cramming. It's amazing when I still speak to students that when you talk in terms of revising for different subjects, especially the wordy subjects such as English and history, they think that sort of doing 2.5 hours straight is the best way to go and then moving on to another subject. Actually, that isn't the case. I will hold my hands up that when I was younger and I was their age, I did exactly the same thing. I would try and read a lot of information, especially for English and history. I studied history, and up to between an hour to 2 hours of just reading information in my exercise book, thinking that I would remember it. And it doesn't work like a lot of the students think it would. Interleaving is another revision strategy that Mr. Stones has talked to the students about before, and this is basically a process where students mix multiple subjects or topics while they study in order to improve their learning. And you'll see from the diagram there, you've got topic 1 all the way through to topic 6, and you are doing very small bits on different topics instead of one huge one, which again, when they've done the research into this over students for the past 20-30 years, it doesn't work as effectively if you do big blocks all at once. Miss Waynes has just mentioned this as well. Practice testing is the #1 thing still that says helps students revise. So that is when they've gone over their material in their exercise book or the revision guide, for example. It's actually the testing that they give themselves which helps them moving forward and remembering some of the key answers to difficult questions, rather than just highlighting things in their revision guide or their exercise book. Some just general pointers when they are thinking about the revision in general. When you come up with a point that you are unsure of, and there will be elements in your exercise book where you think for whatever reason, oh, I didn't quite get that, or I didn't quite understand it, you've still got time obviously in these remaining months to go back to your subject teachers and get in touch with them to help you if you are unsure. And emailing teachers just with a query sometimes is the best way to go about them, because obviously with the COVID restrictions, we've not been able to have students moving around the site going to speak to us teachers directly as we might have liked. And then this, I obviously mentioned earlier on the year, the information even as well. And when you're thinking about the temperature at the moment, it probably applies more so now with how cold it is, but it's just focusing on their attendance. We know that if students aren't here, and if they're having over 17 days off in a year and their attendance drops below 90%, this can lead to an average drop of a full grade for each GCSE subject. So with the 3 or 4 months left, I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we get students in the building, in their lessons, working hard to fulfill their future potential. That's everything from me. Before I pass over to Miss Clement, who's obviously head of the English department, I just want to say that, again, students or parents, I'm available on email, nf@nortoncollege.net, to help with any queries or questions you have in obviously these last 2 or 3 months, which are very, very important to the students' futures. Thank you, and I'll now pass over to Miss Clement.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rachel Clement, Curriculum Leader for English. Tonight, I knew in many ways that Mr. Fryers was already going to steal my thunder, talking about strategies such as interleaving and really condensing revision, all the kind of strategies that you've been spoken to about in school already do certainly apply to English. But I'd like to use the opportunity tonight to talk through just a few very specific English-related strategies that help boost students' grades year in, year out. So parents, I'm sure, already know that for English, we actually have 2 GCSEs, English Literature and then English Language. So we're going to treat those separately tonight. And I thought just to begin with, it's kind of useful to have a look at the breakdown of the GCSE itself into its papers and its content. So beginning with Literature, you can see we have 2 papers there. The texts which are covered on each paper are in red. So for paper 1, students will look at one question for a power and conflict poem. On that question, they have a poem printed on the exam, and it's their job to remember enough about another poem that they've studied in order to compare it to that poem on the exam. Now, when we're thinking about English, the idea of memorizing or remembering a text doesn't mean that students have to remember lots and lots of quotations. Many students know quotations already, which is wonderful, and they can certainly build confidence in an exam. But actually, what examiners want to know is that you understand what the text is about and then the deeper meanings underneath it. So if we think about that question on its own, the comparison element really comes from your understanding and the work you've done in class, not just remembering quotations. Underneath that then, so the second part of paper 1, 1C, we have an inspector calls. In this exam, we have no books, it's closed book. And again, students aren't expected to remember quotations, but they are expected to have a deep understanding of the meaning behind the text and have their own personal opinions about it. I know in our mock exams, a lot of students were very strong on those elements already, so that was good. So paper 1 for this year is slightly different to other years. It's split into 2 50-minute exams. This is exactly the same format as students sat for their first set of mock exams. So that is familiar to our year 11s already. Moving on to paper 2 then, we have Macbeth. It's another extract question, and it's another question in which students have to compare that extract to something they know about the play as a whole. Section B is slightly different in that this section tests a text which hasn't been studied in class at all. It will be 2 unseen poems. So really for this element of the exam, students are being tested on their ability to adapt the skills that they've honed studying the anthology cluster to actually looking at any poem that's put in front of them. Now, the poems students are given in the exams aren't quite as challenging as the ones they've done in class. So there is a little bit of leeway there for students to really get their teeth into thinking about their own ideas for this one. And it's not quite as intimidating as some students think. So that is literature, 2 papers. Thinking now about the revision for literature. And I'd like to think firstly about the resources that students have at hand for this. So really, first port of call, exercise books, notes made in class. This is work that you've already done for these texts, ideas that you've already gathered, kind of explanations which you've already given. Reuse those ideas in your exams. You do not have to think of new content each time. So look over your notes, think about what you've thought already, and then just recycle and reuse. Revision guides are also excellent because of the format and the clear structure of them. So if you have some of those already, those can be a really, really big help. Sparknotes.com is fantastic, clear, but also with enough detail that if you're aiming for those higher grade 7+, there are still pieces of information on that website which link to those higher thought and higher level critical thinking ideas. And then if you feel as though you need a bit of break from reading, there are some fantastic YouTube videos, plot summaries, things like that, to give yourself a break from reading. And if you like to listen to things, it can be a real help. Essential knowledge for literature, know the plot of each text. If you don't know what happens in that text, you will struggle. So that is your first port of call for making sure you're prepared. Once you know that, some ideas about characters, and think about how they develop over the course of a text. Ideas about themes, so we know themes are just the main ideas in a text. So for Macbeth, it would be guilt, it would be the supernatural. And think about how those themes again are developed across the text. And then the final bullet point there, the writer's message. For those high level grades, think about what the writer is trying to convey to us. What do they want us to learn? What do they want us to think? As parents sitting at home, listen to our presentation tonight, I just wanted to add in a few bits that you can do to help your child in this, and to kind of turn it into something which is less of a chore and more of something that we can use to, I suppose, learn about each other as well. One of my favourite things about being an English teacher is getting to know students. And it's interesting to find their opinions about a text can tell us a lot about them. So rewatch Macbeth with your child. You could support with some quotation quizzing, but actually the bottom bullet point there, asking questions. Any question you can think of about the text they're reading will be a help. So what are your impressions of this character? Does he change? What's the story about? Keep quizzing them, and that will really, really support. English language. For English language then, we have 2 exams again. Paper 1 is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. This is our exam which tests fiction reading and writing. Fiction reading and writing. Paper 2 is Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives, and this tests non-fiction reading and writing. So for this exam, students will have not seen the text before. They'll be given a random text on the day, and they'll be asked to answer a series of questions about that text. So really for this exam, it's about knowing what those questions are going to ask. The questions are the same each year, it's just the extracts which are different. The second part of each exam is asking students to write something. So for paper 1, the fiction paper, they have to write a story or a description. And then for paper 2, non-fiction, they're being asked to write texts like formal letters, speeches, essays, all those kinds of non-fiction texts which they've studied in class before. So really important for this paper, they know what questions are coming up, and they've done some writing practice for that second part of the exam. So revising for English language, resources, news, websites. For that language paper 2, really at this stage, one of the best things you can do is read the news, think about how the opinions of writers are being presented. For paper 1, you can use your favourite novels. Open the first page, have a look at it, and see if you can answer some of those paper 1 questions. In class, you will be given some question structure guides for both papers, if you haven't already been given those. So you'll be able to use those to prepare yourself, like I say, for the fact that every single question on both exams is the same every year. And then in class, as we move forward into the language study, the model responses that we create will be a real big help. Essential knowledge for language is a little bit slimmer. So the structure of each exam, and then just ideas about how to approach fiction and non-fiction writing. So think about all the work you've done in class on story writing, newspaper article writing, really bring those ideas together and make sure that you know what you'd put into each of those types of text. And then for supportive parents, read the opening of a novel with your child and ask them some questions. So what's happening? How are the characters being presented? What do you think of this? Will be a real big help again to students accessing that language paper 1. And then for paper 2, read the news with your child and ask them their opinion. And if their opinion differs to that news article, maybe you can even convince them to write it up, and that would be a massive help for that section B. So just a final note for English then, it's not about remembering loads of quotations, it's not about stressing, it's not about feeling as though you've got to reinvent the wheel. It's about showing off what you know, reusing the ideas that you already have, and making sure that you know the text well enough to be confident when you sit in that exam hall. So that's all from me tonight. Thank you for listening, and I'll pass over to Mr. Atkinson now.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Mr. Atkinson, Head of Maths. Tonight I wanted to talk to you about maths and maths revision, and I thought initially I'd start by talking about the structure of the exam. So all the pupils will know this, but not necessarily the parents and the carers at home. The papers are split into 3. There's a foundation paper which covers calculator, non-calculator and calculator, and then there's a higher paper as well, which is the same calculator, non-calculator and calculator. So those 3 papers, and they are an hour and a half each. There is a formula sheet, and there's an addition than usual to the area of a trapezium, volume of prism, and these are in addition to what was shown last time. The main thing for when you're revising math is to have a plan. So currently you'll know that topics are secure, topics are less secure, and topics that you struggle with, and you'll know your current grade that you're working at from the marks. So we want you to focus on topics that are less secure and topics that you really struggle with. So target grade, you'll have an estimated grade, but we want you to look at a target grade. And so in order to achieve your target grade, you need to know what you're revising. So we have question level analysis, you have exercise books, you have past papers, And looking at the question, just go back one, looking at the question level analysis, we've started trialling this year with a couple of sets from year 11, a QLA sheet, and we'll be rolling this out to the rest of the year 11s next week. And this breaks down all the questions that they're doing in an exam paper. And this is a different example. And on the left-hand side, you can see the grade. Next to that, there is a Maths Watch clip. And in the middle, there's a topic. On the right-hand side, there's a red, amber, and green. So green suggests that the child is secure in that area. Amber suggests that they need to do some more work. And red is an area that they're not very secure with. If I look specifically at one of those QLAs, you can see worded LCM questions. That's lowest common multiplier. It circles it as a grade 4. And it also tells me a Maths Watch is clip 80. Now, all the pupils in year 11 have access to the Maths Watch clips. So if we go on to clip 80 on the Maths Watch, we've got lowest common multiple. And when they access that, it will show a video and it'll talk them through what the lowest common multiple is. And this particular example talks about 60 and 96. And then that's immediately followed by some questions. And say all the children have access to Maths Watch. If they don't know the username and the password, they need to speak to the maths teacher over the next couple of lessons, and the maths teacher will be able to supply them that. But that Maths Watch, and you can see there, has access to all the topics that are going to be in the year 11 GCSE papers. Going back to the maths book, so another area that they can revise from is using the maths books. And within the maths books, they've got examples that they've written down. They can use that alongside the QLA sheet that we talked about. Within the maths books as well, there are QLA sheets that they will have gone over and recorded from past papers that they've done. And then the other thing that we're trialing, and this will be rolled out in the next couple of weeks as well, is something called Pinpoint Learning. And they'll have a unique username and password. And as you can see there, it's identified 3 topics for this individual child that they're not very secure on. And next to those 3 topics, again, it links Maths Watch clips as well. In conjunction with that, we are able to print some booklets, so specific questions for those areas that they need more support with, and they go from easier, medium to harder. So depending on what grade they're working at, whether it's a grade 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, they can choose the question they want to work on and get the answers. So again, Pinpoint will provide them with the answers after they've done the work. The children are about to do, or in the process of doing, their second paper this week in maths. And all this data from that paper will be loaded up over the next week. So by the end of next week, they'll have those QLA sheets. And say from that, we'll be able to provide personalised revision guides. One of the other areas we talked about is past papers. We have an abundance of past papers in the maths office. So use the exercise books, use the QLA sheets that we'll provide in the next couple of weeks. We'll print personalised question booklets, but also do more past papers, because there's nothing better than actually sitting down and working through a past paper for an hour and a half. And as I say, if you need some more past papers, we can provide those. So what next? Just to recap really, identify the topics they're not secure on. A good way of doing that is using the QLA. Use the following areas for support, so that's Maths Watch, exercise books, websites, and obviously the teacher. And then finally, try some similar questions as well. So thank you very much. I'm now going to pass you over to Mrs. Layton.
Thank you. Good evening. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'm going to talk you through some of the strategies for revising for science from that viewpoint. So first of all, the exam structure. So there are 6 exams in science. For each exam, there is 3 paper 1, so biology 1, chemistry 1, physics 1. And the topics are on the screen there. Each of the exams is 1 hour 15 minutes and 70 marks. Throughout the test, there are a range of questions, multiple choice, structured, closed short answers, and open response questions from that viewpoint. Looking at paper 2, again, they're the same length, they're 1 hour and 15 minutes, and the topics are on the screen there, so for biology, chemistry, and physics. In order to help you prepare for these exams, we've got a number of resources, and that's what I'm going to talk you through so we know what the resources are that are there to support you. So first of all the students will know that in lessons we use our quick quiz books, and we use them as our starters. Now they're there really to help us identify the areas for development. So your teachers will tell you the most important part when you're doing that quick quiz book is the purple pen. As you've heard others say today, the most important thing is to revise the content that you don't know. So the purple pen bits in there are the bits you need to work on. So by using those quick quiz books and identifying the areas you're uncertain of, you've got a head start on what you need to revise. So once you've identified those areas, you can then use your revision guide. So I know most of our students, how much they bought these. If you still don't have one and would like to buy one, then you can purchase one of those from us. I think they are £6. So starting point for your revision guide would be to red, amber, green, the contents page. Thinking about what you've learned in your quick quiz book, which parts can you and can't you do? Okay, so get your highlighter out and highlight through those topics. Okay, once you've identified those topics, you then have to think, how am I going to revise those? And we said one of the best ways of revising is actually to test yourself. Okay, so another resource we offer is these combined science revision guides. Now, the beauty of these is that you can test yourself with them. You can quiz yourself on them, or you can ask your parents to help you. Okay, they've got questions on one side, answers on the other. Again, they're all color coded, so you can actually very quickly identify the topics or areas you want to work on. So pick the areas you're weakest on and then test yourself. Once you're familiar with those areas, you can move on to the next areas. We've also put together a Word document which will help you, which has got lots of electronic links in it. Okay, and we'll put this on Teams. I'll show you where that's stored in just a minute to help you. So you can see there are three sections to there. So it links directly to the revision guide. So for each topic, there is a block going across. We can see there, B1 cell biology. It tells you which pages in the revision guide for higher and foundation. And then there's revision questions. So I would suggest you start with the revision questions. Check which bits do you know, which bits do you not know. On to the next one there's then videos to support that. So if we have a look forward, you click on those links and those videos will help you review the content that is important from that viewpoint. If we go back to look at the previous one, the next one along is actually exam questions. So there's actually exam questions linked from this booklet. Okay, so higher and foundation level. So if we have a look at those now, so if you click on that link, it will take you directly to the exam questions. So you can see going down the side there, you've got the 6 questions on this one, so you can work your way down through 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then if you click along the tabs at the top, you can actually then look at the mark schemes for those materials. So you can check to see whether you've got that right. And importantly, a lot of them have examiners' comments as well to help you identify what common misconceptions there are. So that document will be really, really helpful for you once you've identified your areas of weakness to think about what do I need to work on and how to improve that. In addition to that, each student has an individual log-on for Eurovision. Okay, if you're not sure what that is, then just ask your science teacher. They'll be more than happy to help you get your login for that. And that will enable you to set yourself questions and on the areas you want to work on. So it could be gap fills, it could be match up, or it could be exam style questions. As we said before, the best way of revising is to test yourself. What do you and don't you know? So that Eurovision site is really, really important for you from that viewpoint. Finally, the last resource I'd like to share with you is the Science Teams site. So we've uploaded all of these things, and that document I've referred to tonight will be on there next week for you to use. And all of these resources are laid out topic by topic so that you can click on those and find the resources that you want to do from that viewpoint. So hopefully that's given you an idea of all the resources that we have on offer in science and how to make use of them. All right, I'm going to hand back to Mrs. Weens now. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for joining us this evening, Year 11 students and Year 11 parents. We really hope you found the evening beneficial in supporting revision in general, but also the strategies that could be used, how to do this effectively, but to hear specifically from subject areas. We really hope that that information will support you with your revision. So just the final page is the contact information for the staff that you've heard from this evening. If you would like to email us, if we can support you or your child in any way with their revision over the coming months, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and please let us know if there's anything we can do further. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Good night.